What is going on? Hoops Freaks unite everywhere. I'm Hoops Freak Fensty, and it's time to go into another blast from the past when it comes to the NBA, talking all things 90s NBA. It is Hoops Freak Fensty. My name is Justin Fensterman, and I love basketball. I'm obsessed with the NBA. How did I become so obsessed with the NBA and sports in general to the point where I'm making it my life from a career standpoint and just about every interest that I have? 90s NBA. Go out and check out previous episodes of Hoops Freak Fensty. Got a fun one today. You can tell by the jersey. We're going to Charlotte, talking about the Charlotte Hornets. And with so many stories from the 1990s, this one, another short but sweet story of the 1990s Charlotte Hornets, a team that not only influenced future NBA teams, a team that had a little bit of everything that any NBA fan can latch on to, and a team with so many players to love that we still remember today. And this is a team that didn't have a crazy NBA history from the 40s all the way up to this point in the 90s. No, they were an expansion team getting launched in 1988. Now, when you think of the Charlotte Hornets here, and you think of the teal, you think of Buzz City, you think of, in the mid and late 90s, the honeycomb painted area of the court, you think of the Hornets. You think of Hugo the Hornet, a great mascot. And the cool thing about the Charlotte Hornets, something that I was thinking about earlier, was that for all of those kids like myself that were watching the NBA, a hornet, a bug, kids like bugs, and they can be attracted to bugs, even though bees, they're good for the environment, but they sting. And a lot of kids, including me as an adult, afraid of bees. Biggest fear, bees. Don't put me near a bee. I'm going to run right away. I don't care if I'm in a movie theater or a basketball game, something comes inside, bzz, I'm out of there. That's how afraid of bees I am. Not these bees, though. Everybody was attracted to the honey that this Hornets team brought to sports. This Charlotte Hornets team, when you think about how did it all begin, the first draft pick in 1988 of the Charlotte Hornets, beyond the expansion draft, the first draft pick, Rex Chapman. Rex Chapman, we all know Rex Chapman now, who tells stories from the past when it comes to the NBA and is battling with addiction and everything that came along with it. But Rex Chapman was that first draft pick. And you remember Rex Chapman and the driving ability, the fierce competitiveness, the dunks. Excellent. You had Rex Chapman. You had Del Curry, who was kind of pissed because he was the first pick of the expansion draft, 1988. And then they get Rex Chapman. He's like, what the hell? I'm the two guard here. Del Curry, by the way, for those that don't know a little history, he's got two sons, one of which is the greatest shooter in NBA history, Stephen Curry, and even his brother, Seth Curry, who's been on a few teams in this league. Well, Del Curry, a guy who was able to hit at a 40% clip from downtown, was this team's top prize in the 1988 expansion draft. Miami Heat were also coming in at around that time. Funny, because these two teams off the court meet up business-wise later on. As any expansion team, though, when you have a ragtag bunch, you have a bunch of, you don't want to call them castaways, but unprotected players going to the Charlotte Hornets. I mentioned Del Curry, and for those in the back that can't see, there was another player taken in that expansion draft. Tyrone Muggsy Bogues, all 5'3" of him. That's right, 5'3". When you think of NBA players, and especially NBA players from the 1990s, you think of these big, gigantic superheroes, Greek gods, essentially, statues. You can't be these people. And that's what makes you look up to them. But with Muggsy Bogues, what made him such an appealing player is that he looked like the rest of us. The rest of us who are between 5 and 6 feet tall. And as a kid, and I saw Muggsy Bogues, by the time I was 10 years old, I was already taller than him. But I still looked up to him because if he could do it at his height against those behemoths in the NBA, like Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robinson, Patrick Ewing, to name a few, if he could do it, maybe one of us could do it too. And that's why fans, players, teammates, opponents, everybody who was an NBA fan in the 1990s idolized Muggsy Bogues. And Muggsy Bogues being on this team also helped keep this team together. A good character guy who just wanted to win. This Hornets team, though, at the start really wasn't winning. 19 wins, 26 wins, and a bunch of ragtag bunch. Now they have to get someone in the draft. 1991 comes. They land the first overall pick. And who is it? Out of UNLV, the Runnin' Rebels, the 1990 NCAA champion Runnin' Rebels, Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson, for the first few years, first 2 years of his career, nobody can stop this guy. 6'7" guy, but huge muscular build. And like a train running down that lane. When he starts to drive, everybody moves out of the way. He helped make this team run faster, he and Bogues. He was able to run the floor with the ball. He was mainly a driver, but he can also pass. That's what was good about Larry Johnson. But it was more than that. It was personality. The 1990s were a time in the NBA when you started to see these players flex their personality muscles. Guys like Shaquille O'Neal. Guys like Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson had a gold tooth. Distinguishing. Uniqueness. People gravitated towards him because you always saw that gold tooth. Because when Larry Johnson dunked the ball, he didn't just dunk and run back to the other side. No, knew the camera's on him. He dunked. Ah! That's what he did. Perfect image. Gold tooth. Center of your eyesight. Uniqueness. The ferociousness. You knew you had someone here in Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson wins Rookie of the Year. What's funny is, at this point, you're also looking at a team that has guys like Kendall Gill, another good scorer, Del Curry, a good shooter, Muggsy Bogues, a fantastic playmaker on both sides of the ball. But now you've got this big forward who can't be stopped and who's bodying up everybody on defense, causing havoc. And now the building blocks are starting to form. Could they get lucky again in 1992 in the draft lottery? Can they do it? They already have the Rookie of the Year. You know what the big prize is in the 1992 NBA draft lottery. Big Shaq, Shaquille O'Neal. But the Hornets didn't get lucky this time. The Magic get number 1. Hornets get number 2. But that's okay. They're not leaving empty-handed. They get from Georgetown, Alonzo Mourning. Big 6'10", 6'11" guy. But even more impressive than his height was the way that he was able to utilize it, the speed on defense, not afraid of going up to contest a dunk, and also just big, broad shoulders and very muscular to the point where even though he was battling against guys that were a couple inches taller than him, he was able to still defend the post nicely. And getting Alonzo Mourning in 1992 and having Larry Johnson, 2 20-10 guys, essentially, who's going to stop this team? The Hornets had the offense. Alan Bristow did a good job of getting this team to move with the ball, but they didn't have the defense. That's the thing. And as I always say, if you're going to run a fast-paced offense, you got to be ready to get back on defense, and that comes with conditioning. So now you have Larry Johnson, Alonzo Mourning, Muggsy Bogues dishing double-digit dimes per game. You got Del Curry, the sharpshooter. It's all starting to come together. And for the first time in the 1992-1993 season, 44 wins, gets them into the NBA playoffs. Alonzo Mourning's rookie year in the NBA playoffs. And in the first round, they go up against a team that has a lot of experience in the Boston Celtics. So think of this. This Charlotte Hornets team, 92-93, Larry Johnson, pretty mature, hard to stop. Alonzo Mourning now turning back shots, and this team becoming better defensively. They're going up against Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish, who are at the twilight of their careers. You're talking about guys that have been in the league since 1979, 1980. And so, of course, in the first round, despite the Celtics having that experience, the Hornets were bringing so much strength to the matchup that they were able to compete against the seasoned McHale and Parrish. Parrish, excellent defender. Both of them very strong defenders, very aggressive. And the best part of that series, because back in those times, the first round was a best of 5. In that series in game 4, final seconds, Alonzo Mourning gets the ball near the top of the key, right inside. We know Alonzo Mourning for those post moves, but he also had some range too. He can hit mid-range shots. He can hit shots further out. Right inside the arc at the top of the key, he gets the ball off the inbounds play and makes a fall-away jumper, and then he ends up falling down at the end. Boom, 0.4 seconds to go to give the Hornets the lead. And ultimately, everyone thought it was a buzzer beater, but no, there are still 0.4 of a second to go. But ultimately, the Charlotte Hornets win their first ever playoff series. They go to the second round, and they lose to a very monstrous, deep Knicks team. And while it stinks to lose to that Knicks team, making the playoffs for the first time ever, winning a series, and then losing 4-1 to one of the top teams that you're trying to become more like, very strong accomplishment for the Charlotte Hornets in Alonzo Mourning's rookie year. Then things changed. And beyond what goes on the basketball court, let's also talk about what goes on off the basketball court. In the summer of 1993, at a charity basketball game, Larry Johnson injures his lower back. And from the reports that I saw on that going back through, he injured his lower back and it shot the pain through his leg. So injured his back, was impacting his leg. Had to have surgery. Did not return to 100%. Wasn't healing. The lower body strength that he had was gone after the surgery and rehabilitation. But it was around this time, don't know if it was paranoia from other players suddenly retiring like Michael Jordan. It just happened to be around that time. But Larry Johnson is given a 12-year, $84 million contract extension. 12-year, $84 million. And while the deal is so gigantic, they wanted to make sure that they kept their superstar. But the problem is they had another one. Who was the best player on that team? Was it Larry Johnson or Alonzo Mourning? Larry Johnson had an extra year of seasoning on Mourning at the time. That was his first year. So a little bit weird because now you're paying Larry Johnson. Well, what about Alonzo Mourning? They weren't going to the second round before Mourning got there. And in 1994, where now guys like Kendall Gill are traded, some of their pieces now swapped out a little bit. They did have Hersey Hawkins, who would later make a big impact on the Sonics, but he was on the Hornets for a couple of years. But unfortunately, the 93-94 season, for the most part, was lost. 500 season. You had all-stars on the team because Mourning and Johnson were two guys that did make the all-star team. And Alonzo Mourning missed over 20 games. And because of recurring back issues from the original back injury from 1993, Larry Johnson missed over 30 games, and this team did not make the playoffs. the big bright spot of that Hornets squad was that Del Curry did win Sixth Man of the Year. And in a funny turn of events, and you see the images and they pop up as popular basketball images from back in time, you see Alonzo Mourning essentially babysitting both Steph and Seth Curry and talking on his phone, one of those old school, bigger cell phones, babysitting them while Del Curry was in the 1994 three-point shootout. So we go to 94-95 now. The team is still intact. Larry Johnson, now a year removed from this big contract, in which year one didn't really earn because of how many games that he missed, the team missing the playoffs. And all of a sudden, you saw the best year. They always say the best is yet to come. And you got to also remember that, and you see this a lot when you have two really young superstars as kind of the leaders, or the stars in the making as the leaders of the team. You see that division in the locker room. And there were some problems there. And they were kept under wraps for a little bit, but they started to rear the ugly head when Alonzo Mourning and Larry Johnson started to not get as well. And it was evidenced in the 1994-1995 season. They were still able to play together on the court. They were both all-stars that year. They won 50 games. They were ninth in offense. They ran at a very fast pace. They were hard to stop. And just when you thought you had the inside figured out, there's Del Curry shooting threes. What's funny is after getting rid of Kendall Gill, they end up trading Hersey Hawkins to get back Kendall Gill. I just find that very funny, and that was later on. But in 94-95, still having Hawkins, you have Hawkins as the driver. This team wins 50 games. And unfortunately, they ran into, in the playoffs, the 1995 Chicago Bulls team that were a fifth seed. A fifth seed. They wouldn't have been had Michael Jordan played the whole year and not the final month or so of the season. They got stuck in the 4-5 matchup, which stinks for them. Absolutely stinks for them. And as well as they tried to play, the Bulls beat them in that first round. Very disappointing end to the season, but you saw what this team could be. You saw the wings, you saw the defense, you saw Alonzo Mourning become more impactful, an all-star. Larry Johnson, an all-star again. They had the pieces, but then the economics started to really come into play. And off the court, as a little bit of a footnote, there was kind of a rumored in-season lockout that was going to happen around this time too. So the players started to get a little bit more leverage in which they can start to become unrestricted free agents. We saw it happen with Shaquille O'Neal. Now, Alonzo Mourning wants to get paid. Very upfront in the summer before the 1995-1996 season. They're already paying Larry Johnson. Now Mourning wants to get paid. And the Hornets are not willing to do it. And it was so interesting that in this league, there are franchises that just don't look into the future, don't see what's ahead of them in a year from now. They can't tell. Instead, they have to have their egos try to keep them on this pedestal that they have control of the players. They own the players. But they're not looking what's in front of them. They're not seeing that the city has a mural painted of Mourning, Johnson, and Bogues. These are the guys you've invested in. Make sure you keep them. The pieces around them, okay, you can go in and out with certain pieces. Maybe some will take a pay cut if they see that this team is on the rise, which they are. But the Hornets management wouldn't pay Alonzo Mourning. And Alonzo Mourning, who would essentially become the first $100 million man in basketball, Alonzo Mourning prior to the 1995-96 season was traded to the Miami Heat. Pat Riley just got there. And Pat Riley was someone that always looked forward, always saw what was ahead, what was next. He left the Knicks because the Knicks wouldn't give him more control of the organization to develop the team the way he wanted it. The Knicks were like, oh, you just stay the coach. You be the coach. That's what we're paying you for. But they didn't realize how much of an impact. This isn't just any coach. This is a guy who made Showtime in LA. One of the guys who made Showtime in LA. Ups to Paul Westhead right there. But I'll still say Pat Riley is an NBA guy, a player, a coach, and someone who just gets the league, always has. And so he acquires Alonzo Mourning. And yes, the Hornets end up getting Glenn Rice, who would become an all-star. Matt Geiger, decent average center, but a big body. And still, Alonzo Mourning was on the rise, and they didn't just foresee that they needed to pay this guy. And yes, part of the reason, I know I'm bashing the Hornets management at the time, there was beef between Mourning and Johnson. So if they kept both, would they be able to hang in there together? I would ultimately say that beef, Larry Johnson had an ego, Alonzo Mourning had an ego. Larry Johnson would clown Alonzo Mourning a little bit. One thing rumored was that the rookie of the year wearing the jacket around because Alonzo Mourning had Shaq in his rookie class, so he wasn't going to win rookie of the year. But if Alonzo Mourning got paid, would that have solved the problems? Probably could have, because that's what he was pissed off about, not getting paid. Not getting paid shows a lack of respect to a guy like Alonzo Mourning with this team on the rise defensively because of him, not exactly because of Larry Johnson. And it's quite clear that Larry Johnson at this point, we're talking 1995, the mobility that he had his first couple of years since the original back injury, it did not return. He was still fierce, but he wasn't going up as hard. He wasn't always trying to drive. He wasn't going in for every rebound anymore. He started to take more jumpers. He started to take more threes. He started to develop an outside game. He started to develop a post game. He wasn't just driving and looking for contact anymore. His body couldn't handle that. So Alonzo Mourning is now on the Miami Heat. And that essentially in succession with those players that really impacted the Hornets. You had Alonzo Mourning leave the team in 95. Larry Johnson gets traded to the Knicks in 1996 for Anthony Mason, who ended up working out really well there. They end up trading the pick that was Kobe Bryant to the Lakers. They get back Vlade Divac, whoopity-doo, but Kobe on the Lakers. They lose Muggsy Bogues in 1997 after signing David Wesley, trying to get Muggsy Bogues to retire. They end up losing Muggsy Bogues there because they trade him away. And then they part ways essentially with Del Curry. So all of those guys leaving in succession 1 year after another. This Hornets team was just not the same as it was then, especially with guys like Muggsy Bogues and Larry Johnson. And even you take a movie that both were in, Muggsy Bogues and Larry Johnson, they were in Space Jam. Larry Johnson's character in Space Jam, one of the Monstars that took his power. And to think you can have anyone in the NBA, you have Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, Sean Bradley, big guys here. You could have anyone in the NBA be in Space Jam. They chose Muggsy Bogues. And you see the little guy who had the fast handles on the Monstars took Muggsy Bogues' powers. Muggsy Bogues, by the way, this is not a Space Jam figure of Muggsy Bogues. He actually had one. It was in production, and then they pulled it because they're stupid, and they shouldn't have pulled it because the Space Jam figures were awesome. Here's a good look one more time. Larry Johnson Space Jam figure, Muggsy Bogues starter figure right there. Would the team have success again? Yes, it would. Decent success in 1997. But what happened? They ran into a more experienced New York Knicks team in the playoffs, and they just couldn't get over that hump of the first or second round. They even got B.J. Armstrong in 98, and they faced the Bulls. B.J. Armstrong started talking crap. That didn't work out. While those Glenn Rice-led Charlotte Hornets team with Anthony Mason on there, Vlade Divac on the team, did have a little bit of success. It didn't have the flair. It didn't have the energy. And it didn't have the personality that one of my favorite NBA Jam Tournament Edition teams had in the Charlotte Hornets. Mourning, Johnson, and then Bogues, who you could sub in. If you hit the A button on your Super Nintendo, you get Muggsy Bogues in there. And I'll say this. It is a video game, a 8-bit, 16-bit video game, but the Muggsy Bogues character and the way he plays in the NBA is the closest to the actual NBA player and moveset of Muggsy Bogues of anyone in NBA Jam, in my opinion. John Stockton is the number 2 seed, but Muggsy Bogues with the drives, the scoops, the extra quickness, he is replicated perfectly in NBA Jam. 5'3", and that's it. That's all it takes. And it just shows out there that if you have a dream and you want to accomplish it, you don't let anybody tell you can't. You don't listen to the chatter around you. You do what you love and not focus on having to become the best of all time, but becoming the best of you. And that's why Muggsy Bogues had a long career. That's why Charlotte invested in him and kept him on the team. And that's why he was a focal point of the offense, because before the coaching change that brought Bristow to the head coaching job, he was on the bench. Bristow saw that effort. He saw what Muggsy Bogues could do, the quickness, the tenacity on defense. He was a hard guy to have on you because he could pick your pocket, steal the ball, race down the court. You're not getting to him. That's how great Muggsy Bogues was. That Charlotte Hornets team, a fun team, but like so many other stories of the 90s, very short-lived. Make sure you like and subscribe to Hoops Freak Fensty to go back in time, take a mental break, and relive some of the greatest sports moments of the 1990s. And let me know in the comments section, what were your favorite 90s NBA stories? Let's talk about them. This is what it's all about. It's celebrating a great time and making it a greater time once again. 90s NBA, that's what I'm freaking on. That's why I'm the freak, and I love it so much. For my producer, Adam Bernard, he's a freak of nature as well. When it comes to producing, I'm Justin Fensterman. I'll see you freaks later.